Hello, welcome to IDAGIO Live and to the Bach workshops on the Bach Cello Suites. Today, Sarabande from the third suite. For the third time today, I am coming to you from Forcalquier, a beautiful town, small town, in the south of France, in the Provence. And because today is the last day of our festival, Rencontre musicale de Haute-Provence. I give you again the web link, rmhp.fr, where you can find all the information. And yes, it is the last day of our festival. I just came off the stage 20 minutes ago, and some of the colleagues are still playing in the beautiful cathedral of Forcalquier, and we will have our actual final concert tonight at 9 p.m. So yeah, you know, in the coming years, think about it, come to Forcalquier, you'll see beautiful scenery, beautiful surroundings, lavender fields, and a bunch of very motivated musicians who give their heart, and everything to transmit their passion of the music. And also I want to say a big thank to the amazing team of volunteers who give so much so that this festival can happen. And this year, you know, 2 months ago, we didn't know whether we would be whether we would be allowed to have this festival. So we are even more grateful and filled with joy that this is actually happening. And as I mentioned last week, my guest today, for the first time in this series, will be here in person, because the flautist and conductor and multi-talented Alexey Kosenko will be my guest. He is in our festival. He was in our festival this whole week, and he has absolutely excited our listeners and made them love the flute even more than they ever had before. So before Alexis joins us, actually he has already arrived, I see him, I'm going to talk a little bit about the topic of the day, the Sarabande from the third suite. First I will play a little bit, and then I will talk about a few topics. So, like in particularly the first Sarabande that we had, you see this very important first and second beat, this attraction between these two. What I find very beautiful in this first part that I just played is that we first start with this beautiful descending line, and then we go down, and we go down. So, and the next 4 bars, we will go up, but look at how Bach creates not only the rising line, but the expectation. First thing is this big surprise on the third beat. We actually expect an F natural, you know, we expect that we stay. Something like this. And I find so beautiful how he does that. The modulation, the note that makes the modulation, is happening on the least important beat, on the weakest beat, on the third beat. And this is what makes it so beautiful and gracious. And in the next bar, for the first time time in the piece, Bach will give an emphasis on the third beat, on this, supposedly on this less important beat, which helps to create tension and keep the line going. Appoggiatura. And then very dramatic harmonies by the B flat. Even though we have been modulating clearly towards G major, but the actual cadenza is happening in minor. And then he finishes, of course on purpose, on an ambiguous octave, not stating whether we are actually back in major on this last bar or whether we are staying in minor. We start the second half with a solo of the middle voice. Connecting with the bass. Modulation to A minor. And now comes the passage which to which I wanted to put the spotlight today, with the title about the hemiola and its power and its signification. Remember, we have talked about hemiolas before, and I told you, I remember that in the most striking example of how Bach uses hemiolas is in the fugue of the fifth suite, in the prelude, where basically each end of section, to bring some clarity, he puts a small hemiola, which sort of says, and so it was in G minor, and so it was in C minor, and so on. Here, I find this hemiola very, very special in the whole six suites because first of all, because it's not at the end of a part or at some. We just started our second half, and so where does he want to go? So. This C sharp after a sort of bass solo, if one can say. And that's where, after creating this different space-time thanks to the hemiola and this extraordinary modulation with the C sharp, he rises, he brings us really to float and to have a feeling of apesanteur. I'm missing the word in like the astronauts when they are swimming. Second bar, we are still on the same harmony, but he brings in this diminished seven to bring even more, and then we can make our cadenza in D minor. I want to take a little moment to use this example as one of the key moments where you can, when you do your repeats, where you should use the harmony to inspire you in the subject of how do I differentiate my first and second time. Such a groundbreaking event in a piece, like this hemiola followed by this C sharp, can bring us, it is so full of substance and so dramatic harmonically that we can express it in many different ways. And I think these are the moments that should guide us in how we construct a first and a second time. I will, if I may, I will show you an example now. That the first time. be, now I sort of let myself be enveloped by this very rich harmony, and I embraced, so to say, the moment. I would probably then, going the second time, I would maybe then go into this passage by making it more like if it was raising questions, if it was like if such differences, such unexpected harmonies would put us in a situation where we reflect on what we heard the first time. So. So what I did is really try to suspend time a little bit by using that lack of gravity that Bach creates by letting us go in this line for 2 bars on one harmony. What comes afterwards is at least as amazing, if not even more. So we have done our cadenza in D minor. We expect maybe, I don't know, probably going back to C major, going back home. But Bach will make us go home in a much more philosophical way, in a way. By going where we don't expect, and also this is obviously we feel then we are in G major, and we feel that it's an unexpected harmony. But not only that, he puts this chord, this with the 7th in the bass, and that immediately it's really the I would say the most unusual, the most unstable position. And then actually we would probably expect that any other composer would have resolved then. And Bach wants to keep us wondering what that is about. Which is exactly the same chord, but in an other order of the note. Which enables him to really develop and open up to G major and fully celebrate it with So we have actually come now in a very open way to G major, which is our dominant key. And how does he go back? Back to C major, which could be very simple. You know, like we expected 4 bars before. That's not what he's doing. He will do something very special and unique for us in this 6th suite. He will bring in what his signature, B-A-C-H. So he brings it here, but he brings it in the bass line. So and now we are back to C major. And I don't know, now I know I'm putting a lot of subjectivity in there, and this is my reading of it. This is very, but I think that the fact that Bach puts this B-A-C-H signature in the bass line, because he could have put it, you know, in the soprano or in the middle voice. He brings in the bass line. In a way, he is talking to us and saying, you know, this bass line that I sometimes don't actually let you hear, that is sometimes not in the note, but it is virtually but very really there. Well, the bass, even though I wrote on my front page 6 suites senza basso without the bass, well, the bass is always, you know, that's where things stand. It is the key to everything. So. And then I love the way he finishes in the most simple way. C major. So this was my reading and my love for this Sarabande from the third suite. Thank you for listening. And now comes the moment. Our friend Alexis is going to come. Dear Alexis, welcome very much. I'm going to put the phone so that we have a bit more angle. Would you prefer to stand, Alexis, or to sit here next to me?
Well, I can sit next to you. Hello,
So,
Jean-Guihen. Yeah, of course.
The cello.
Of course.
Why don't you come here, Alexis?
Yes.
And so people see you first of all. So,
Hello.
hello. This is Alexey Kosenko.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I will just go a little bit further. So, here we are. Thank you so much for coming. You also just came off the stage where you played one of these very unusual pieces that nobody knows, that you brought with us when you came to the festival. And thanks to you, we discovered fantastic pieces. Last night was a concert where Alexis played together with 4 other players of the festival, a piece by Queyras, which I didn't know at all. I didn't know the piece. I didn't know the composer. And today you just came from the stage playing a piece by Ferdinand Ries, with whom that also maybe just before we go to Bach and Sarabande and all this, you want to tell us 2 words about this
Yes, well,
composer?
the fact is that in the Romantic era, composers, the greatest composers, unfortunately neglected the flute a little bit. So we flute players have to be curious and look in what we call the secondary composers, and sometimes we find out that they're not so secondary. And that's the case with Jean-Guihen Queyras, who was a flute player and who is not only forgotten, but even flute players most of the time don't even know of him. Although I think it was a big surprise for everyone, for my partners, but also for the audience, to discover a piece full of invention, but so full of invention, with humor. Somebody who doesn't take himself so seriously, but who has an amazing fun with the music, gives pleasure to everyone, gives smile to everyone, and I think that he's really worth the rediscovering.
I mean, so much fantasy. That's what you said also, but it does feel like an opera, you know, because there's so many ideas.
And I do think that actually he was inspired by opera. He did write operas actually, but also that he wanted people to play with a quintet form to be able to play an opera at home with the instruments and to have fun.
Fantastic. So now, what you also did bring with you on this festival are many different flutes. How many did you actually bring with you?
Well, I brought 8 or 9 flutes, but for reasons which are not only linked to the festival, but because I need to prepare different things with them. But
yes.
And I ended up actually not playing the flute which I intended to play.
Yes, because what happened, where I have to say something here, is that in the first rehearsals, you took out your wooden flute to rehearse the Mozart quartet, flute quartet, and basically the musicians wouldn't let you take out the modern flute after that. They just said we got so hooked to this sound, which has some very, very beautiful quality.
Yes, well, actually, it's even the contrary which happened. First of all, I expect to play the modern flute because everybody here was equipped with metal strings and modern bows. Although many of you actually also have another life playing with period instruments, and I thought that would not mix well with a period flute. But so I started rehearsing with a modern flute, and at some point, because I had the old one, I said maybe I can try to see if it works because I can also play 440 with them. And from this moment on, indeed, they say, "Oh, this is so much more beautiful. Please, would you like to play the concert with it?" Here we are.
So, but I see that now you actually brought your modern.
Because that's the one I use in the concert today for the Ferdinand Ries.
In the Ries. Okay.
Yes. I thought I didn't want to bring it for nothing after all. And I still hope to convince that even a gold flute can be a beautiful instrument.
Fantastic.
Not only
So,
expensive.
tell us about maybe whatever you want to talk about first, about what Bach is for you flautists. There is this beautiful suite that is known by many people, or you know, the B minor. But there is also much more to this, and of course, I am not even talking now your life as a conductor, and you have your own ensemble. So you are anyways. But maybe from the point of view of the flautist, what is your regard on Bach?
Well, Bach. Well, I guess that Bach is my God as he is for you. And you know, I have my favorite composers, and Bach is not even among them because Bach is above my favorite composers. He's almighty. But sometimes it's also very good to remember that he was a man, he was a living person, and also not only bow before him like before his statue, and also treat his music like music also for the day, for the present day. Well, he did write a lot for the flute, and because it's a period which is also very important for the transverse flute, because it was a moment, the transverse flute, even the simple instruments with wood and only one key, which unfortunately I didn't bring today because I was not using it in the concert. Yeah. But however, you probably know of the Baroque flute. It's a very simple instrument, and it was for Bach a very new instrument, and that's something that people don't realize so much. Of course, the transverse flute was existing before him, but in the Renaissance time. But in the beginning of the 17th century, it started to go completely out of fashion in Germany. By the middle of the 17th century, it was not used anymore. And in France, in the very last years of the 17th century, the transverse flute started to be used again, was fabricated in a quite different way with an extra key to make it entirely chromatism, and it gained popularity in France, and some French players who had to migrate off, sometimes for work but often for religion reasons, who emigrated to Germany, also brought the new flute and also new fashion oboes and new fashion bassoons. And in Germany, only the recorder, the Blockflöte, was the flûte à bec was still in use. That was the old flute that Bach knew in his youth, and the French brought the brand new French fashioned transverse flute. So when Bach writes for it, it's a completely new instrument in Germany. Mm-hmm. And he did write a few sonatas with harpsichord obbligato or with basso continuo. He used it in the Fifth Brandenburg Concerto, which is one of the earliest pieces to use the transverse flute. Of course, we have the very famous B minor suite with a badinerie, which you can hear nowadays not only played on the flute but also by mobile phones. Sometimes even during the performance, the live performance of in concert, it happened to me that before I was playing the minuet, which is just bit before the badinerie, and in the silence we heard the phone going ta-ta-ga-da-ta-ga-da-ta-ga-dam. And of course everybody was laughing. I turned to the audience, I said, yes, of course, but we are going to play the minuet first. That was lovely and an amazing time. Although we have doubt now that this B minor suite was intentionally, first of all, written for the flute. We think that it was maybe a violin piece, this is my conviction, and then that Bach transcribed it himself, because we have the handwriting from his pen, he transcribed it for flute.
Okay. Actually, you know, so you brought your flute, so maybe you were going to play something, but maybe some Bach, but maybe something else. Actually, I would just like to give it to you because you have to know that Alexis, as you already can notice, he could now entertain us for the next 2 hours about the history of the flute, about the history of music in general, and about Bach and everything. So, what do you want to talk about, or what do you want to play?
Well, I heard a very interesting talk about the Sarabande in Bach, and then I was interested to also let you know about the Sarabande of the solo flute sonata, which we call nowadays partita. And maybe I can also play a little bit, and you might have questions.
Wonderful.
And for this, the only thing is that I will need to grab a little table and put my computer on it.
So, as you probably noticed, it's very hot in here, so I really admire that Alexis is able to play the flute, because already playing a string instrument in this temperature is quite a challenge, but I imagine a wind instrument is a totally different story. So, here is the score, which is the facsimile, it's beautiful.
Yeah, this is, but that's not Bach, this is...
This is not Bach.
This is Couperin. It's because actually one of the difficult topics with Bach and the dance is that the Bach sarabandes are not the most typical sarabande gestures. And the most typical, as we find in the French suite, is something I could play for you, a few bars of a sarabande taken from Couperin. In which we have this very characterized, and we find it of course sometimes in Bach sarabandes, but much less frequently than we have in French music. This so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there's a very interesting thing, and I'm not sure you mentioned it yet, and stop me if I'm wrong, which is in France especially, when people would count the bar in 3, they often, still in that time, say that it's not a bar in 3, but a bar in 2 unequal beats. Therefore, they would not count it 1, 2, 3, but 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 1, 2. And nowadays, we often, and even people who deal only with early music, we tend to forget this because it's written in some treatises, and we think of course it's in 3. But I think to remember that is sometimes very, very precious. And in what I just played, we hear, for instance, very clear the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and sometimes 1, 2, 3. That makes it very rich. Now, if I switch to the...
If I may just insert, you might remember that something, when I talked about the Sarabande from the second suite, that I said that this was the main difference to the first suite, and this is wonderful that Bach is giving us in the cello suite very different kinds of Sarabandes. And the second one reminds me of this one, because we have the first bar, which goes very much 1, ta di, la da di, la di do dum, and that,
yes.
Exactly. So it's very. Is that something that one could say it's French in style, or
it's totally French. Actually, all dance music in German music came mostly from the French influence. And the Italian influence was, of course, much more the sonata and the concerto, the more lyrical style, the more virtuoso style, but everything that belonged to the dance, therefore the suites, and in harpsichord music, in cello music, and the partitas for violin, and also the one for flute, when they're made out of a suite of dances in the same pitch, usually, because there's most of the time there is no, not the same pitch, I mean the same key.
Ah, yeah.
And that comes directly from the French influence, which was actually quite strong in Germany in the very early years of the 18th century, before the Italian style completely took over. And the Sarabande, from the one and unique suite we have for flute, is quite different. We don't have these so clear accentuations, the 1, 2, and 1, 2. However, it has to be there because this is the essence of a sarabande. So maybe it's not, it can be useful that I play a few bars from it. And I see you're a bit curious about all the notes which are under it.
Yes,
This
yes.
is well, I had the idea to write a double for it.
Wonderful.
And, but that's another topic maybe, unless you want to hear it. But let's just take the first few bars of it.
Yes.
And so on.
Wonderful.
And of course, we don't have this like in the second suite for cello or like in the couprin that I played. It seems to be more linear, but we have to imagine, even within this linearity, that the accentuation has to be there. Wa di ti ti da wa, to end with this unequal 2 beats.
I find this such a fantastic help. This idea that that we have to find which are the two unequal beats in the bar, and
Yes.
that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, or can I ask something?
Please.
Because indeed you intrigue me a lot with this idea of the double. So how do you compose a double? And so I suppose it's much more than an ornamented version of the piece. It's something totally different, no?
Yes, it's rewriting a double is so it's an heavily ornamented version of a simple piece, and we have examples in all instrumental music by Bach, although not unfortunately in the flute piece. And that was, for me, it came first as an exercise to try to improvise in the concerts for myself at home. And the improvisation, as I became more and more secured about knowing really how the harmonies were organized, and using elements from Bach's music that I know, that by experience, I started to find more, how to say, audace,
daring,
to be more daring in my improvisation. I might be completely wrong now. I wrote something which I fixed, and but it's not forever, and I'm sure I tend to change it actually every time I play it. The idea was to either to make a really ornamented version for the repeats, or to play it entirely with repeats as a simple piece, and to then do a complete double to repeat entirely a second time. Why? Because we respect a lot what Bach wrote, like something which is perfect, that shouldn't be touched. But on the other hand, Bach and most of the musicians of the time were very good improvisers, and Bach most of all, because what he wrote, basically he could improvise, which is now completely, I mean, beyond everything we can imagine. But therefore it's almost impossible, according to the rules also of the time, that they would repeat something twice exactly the same. It's just rhetorically, it's not really possible. And of course, with other composers, I mean, normal composers, second-rate composers, or even the good ones, we would do ornamentations in the repeats, and we don't dare so much to do it. I don't know, maybe you do, and maybe certainly some musicians do, but sometimes we are too afraid. It's like the master said, and shall we dare to do it? And if we do it, it will never be the level that he would have done himself. But that brings questions about what is the most important, the actual result or the spirit of it. So I think it's always worth to experiment and to try, and also in concert to propose something to the audience that maybe will never be heard another time, because this day you tried it and another day you might not, or try something different.
Would you mind playing one passage, the original composition, and maybe the double version of it?
Yes. Maybe let me play for you the B part and twice.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Great.
Not too long. Now we come back to the music of the A part. Which develops. And now repeat.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alexis. What a fantastic example. I would suggest that you, if you have the score at home, or you can download it probably from somewhere, and looking at the score and listen to the way Alexis embraces the both the harmonic progress and the melody and he plays with it. He sometimes comes to it and leaves it in such a beautiful way, in such a free way. That's wonderful, wonderful. Unfortunately, Alexis, but I think it was the most possible, most beautiful possible way to end our talk, because I think we have to leave this chat because there is the next chat coming later. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Alexis.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
It was wonderful. And I will see you next week, of course, and we will talk about the bourrée, the bourrées, I should say, from the third suite. And stay safe.